Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rob's Garage video. This episode we're going to be looking at finishing off the disassembly of the 302 Cleveland so we can get the block over to a machine shop and get that next step started. If you're first time here, this is my 69 Australian Falcon project. It's going to have this V8 Cleveland in it. My first time building an engine. Let's do this. All right, to give you a quick update on where we are right now, let's have a quick look at the engine and see how far I've come. So at the moment, I've pulled the cover off. You can see the timing cover off. You can see here I'm getting ready to pull the timing chain off. So I've got this, it's just basically a Daytona 3-prong puller. You can actually make it 2-prong, looks pretty good. Looks like it works. Just wind this off. We can pull this gear off, the timing gear off, and that should be good. And then we'll be able to get to getting the crank in the crankshaft off. The rest of the motor is pretty disassembled. You can see I've got the sump off here and we've got a couple of pistons out already, so I've had a little go at that. Everything's all loosened. I've already loosened all the bolts. We're going to work on getting all of this kind of unbolted today, get those pistons out and have the block basically almost ready to go. Don't know if we'll get the Welsh plugs out today, but we'll give that a go maybe. And yeah, we can see where we're going from there. Now here you'll get a bit of a look at the pistons that I've already taken out. So here's one of them here. You can see the skirts actually look really good, almost like new. It's very little wear on the edges of the skirts here, although pretty unlikely I'm going to put these back in. This is a 302 Cleveland, so these rods are for a 302. These are actually Sterling Moss pistons that actually went in there many years ago when I had this engine rebuilt. Here's the number 8 piston. This is the number 4. What I've also got here, actually let's just take a quick look. You can have a quick look at the bearings here. See if we can get under some light there. You can see the bearings here are actually looking pretty clean. There is a little bit of discoloration there, but overall they, to be honest, they look really, really good. There's very little wear on that. And the same for the bearing inside the conrod there, the upper one. That's actually looking really good as well. You can see there's a bit of discoloration in the middle there, but overall those bearings look really good and the engine seemed to be pretty healthy overall. So there we can see there's a bit of carbon build up on the pistons. We've just got a few other bits and pieces, crank snout and the camshaft. Whatever this thing's called, this is what holds your camshaft timing thing in. What I've also done is I've cut some of this tubing here that I had, and the reason I did that is these pistons, when you're actually pushing them out, they're actually quite hard to push out, at least mine is, to get past the rings. Basically once you're pushing this out to try and get these pistons out, it's actually kind of quite stiff to get them out. So what I'm going to do, because it's kind of hard to keep control of the conrod. Obviously you don't want to let this conrod hit the inside of your cylinder bores because you don't want to scrape those bores with the edge of these the rod bolts here. So I'm just going to stick these over the top like that. These will just push on. I've already done that here, a bit hard to do it one-handed. You can just push those on and that'll just stop any of the bolts here scraping the inside of the rod if I sort of lose control of the rod as it's coming down through the cylinder on its way out. So yeah, so I've got one of those each and we'll do that. Okay, so we do need to get the timing gears off. Now I think this isn't a factory one. This is obviously a double row timing chain that was put on when this engine was rebuilt originally for me. But it's got to come off, and these I believe are a bit more difficult to get off. They're kind of more pressed on, or they usually have a bit stiffer to get on. So we're going to pull the bottom one off with this 3 leg puller here. We'll just wind this off and it should be good to go. Alright, so it actually was pretty much off. I just had a washer in there, which I probably shouldn't have done. Luckily I didn't have it very tight, so I had a washer in there that was just stopping the timing gear from pulling over the bolt. So now we can actually see that's quite loose. We can actually just take this off and we'll be good to go. So there's the camshaft version, the camshaft cog. Alright, so we should be able to do the top pulley now. The only thing I don't like about this puller here is there's a big pointy bit there. I'm not sure why they do that. I'm a bit concerned that's going to dig into the bolt, which is causing me some problems because I was using some washers in there just to try to take up that slack there. Yeah, so that's probably not ideal. Maybe I can just take that off of the grinder and have it flat. All right, we've got this one on. Let's give this a go. Also, never forget your safety glasses. Always a good idea just in case. It's always good to hold on to your tools as well. So there we go. There's the crank sprocket, and you can see what I'm talking about. It's put a bit of a ding in there now. I'm not too worried about that because I'm going to get an ARP one anyway, but you know, it shouldn't happen. I'm not sure what the point of that pointy bit is on the end of the puller, but yeah, I think I'm just definitely going to grind that off in future. So anyway, let's move on. Now, whenever you're disassembling an engine, one of the things you really want to do, especially when you get down to the crank, the rods, and where everything is and what's actually there, it's really good to pay a lot of attention to what is actually there. Because if you don't, you're not going to remember how things went together. Now, the rods are typically numbered, and we can have a look at how they're numbered. But what you'll also find is when you've had stuff rebuilt, things may not align to what it was set up in the factory. And then it's going to get really confusing as to exactly what you had. So this is a really good reason why, pay attention, and also to do a video, kind of like what I'm doing, so you can remember what you were actually doing and go back to it and have a look at what you actually had. Now in my case, it's pretty unlikely that these rods and these pistons are going to get used again, but you never know what ends up happening, and it's always good to have a record of how it was set up and what was actually there. So let's take a look. Okay, so here you can see I've already got the pistons out for cylinders 8. This is 8 over here. This is 5 on this side. So I've just, 4 on this side. So I've just noted it here in a bit of like permanent marker, just so I can remember. Obviously, when you flip it upside down, you're looking at the right thing. So these are already out. What we want to pay attention to is what's actually on the rod here. So this is actually cylinder 7 on this side, and we can look at the rod cap. And we'll see, it says 7 on the end of the cap there. Now you should be able to see that, I think. There we have it. Now, if we jump over the other side, we're going to have a look there, and that actually says, it looks like 8. 8. We've already got 8s out. And if we look down here, someone's actually stamped a 9 in there, so I'm not sure. So this is actually cylinder 3. So now this is going to be a bit confusing because this one here is 8, and I've already pulled 8 out. So, you know, you need to make sure you remember which one this is. So I'll probably have to mark this or tag it before I get it confused with the other one, so I know exactly which cylinder it came out of. So this has actually been, we've got a bit of a mismatched like rods that aren't numbered correctly for this engine because it was rebuilt. So I do remember vaguely them saying something along that lines, but there you go. This is why you've got to pay attention. This one here says 2, and it's got a 2 here, and you can see the 2s are aligned. If we get to the other side, got some weirdness, another 2 and a 2. Again, really strange. This 2's kind of on the side, so it looks like they're kind of new. Now, when this was all machined, it was all set up to actually work, and it would have been machined so that all the caps and everything aligned properly. But again, you probably want to, in this case, I really need to tag these to make sure I know which caps go where and which cylinders went where with this block. I think number 1, what do we got there? Looks like number 5 on the number 5 cylinder. And on the number 1, we have number 1 on the 1 cylinder. Now another thing I'm going to do here, as I'm pushing these down, it just comes flying out. So what I've seen other people do is put some head bolts in and just put a rubber band or something just to catch that piston from dropping all the way down. So it'll just hit this and kind of, you know, stop it falling down onto the ground. All right, so all the pistons are out. Let's take a look at how we are going right now. So as you can see, we're down to just the crank. We've still got the camshaft in there. Crank's actually looking pretty good. It's quite clean. It's a bit of discoloration there, but no scoring. Can't feel anything with your nail along there. It's really quite good. If we have a look at the engine components, we've got the pistons all here. You can see I've numbered them all, what cylinder they came out of. Keep track of the cylinder and where they were, just in case this has to go back together again. All the bearings are very clean, very little wear in general, so it's looking pretty good. And even the skirts got very little wear on the side there at all. So they're almost, you know, you could probably throw these back in, no problems. Hey everyone, back on the engine. I was going to film quite a bit of the disassembly and taking the crank and stuff off, but in the end I got in a bit of a rhythm and ended up doing it without the camera on. So just a quick update, just to tie up this video and I'll get it posted up online, is I've completely disassembled the block now. I think the last video showed just taking out the pistons and stuff, but in the end I did pull the crank out and the camshaft out. So we'll have a quick look at the block and where it's currently at. Okay, so you can see here the crank is now out. I've kept the bearings in so you can have a bit of a look at what the bearings look like. Your thrust bearing here as well. And overall they look really quite clean. You know, you can see the cylinders all look pretty good. And I don't know, it's probably possible just to reassemble this, which I'm considering. It just depends. Just assemble it again. Just give it a good clean up and and put it back together with the same components. But I'm on the fence about whether I do that, put a stroker kit in it or whatever. But the cam's also out, and it pretty much all looks quite good. It's quite clean in there, so it was just good just to give it a tidy up. Let's go and have a look at the crank and the camshaft now that that's out. Okay, so here I've got the crank is out. I've just put it on my bench here. You can see there's just a bit of discoloration on the journals, but overall it's actually pretty good. It's quite clean overall. So yeah, that's the crank looking pretty good. Then this is the camshaft. This is pretty much not going to go back in. It's pretty unlikely this will go back in, even if I just mostly reassemble it the way it was. I don't remember what type of cam specs this had. I know it did have quite a lopey idle. Wasn't like your standard kind of idle, but I'll put probably a roller cam, like a hydraulic roller or something like that, if I put another camshaft in. Okay, so down here I've got the caps for the crank. You can see those just sitting there, and all the pistons are just sitting there as well. They all been numbered. I've probably shown you in the other video, so that's kind of where everything's going to sit for the time being. Okay, so let's talk about what the next steps are for the build. So this is one of those things where you kind of wonder, should you spend a lot of money on this block and, you know, get a stroker crank and all that sort of stuff and build it up from there? Or do I just reassemble it with the current components in it and maybe a few minor upgrades like a brand new hydraulic roller camshaft? Just stick with the same pistons and give it a bit of a tidy up. And really, I guess it comes down to how much do we want to invest in this engine for the time being, because I don't really see this being the last engine that ends up in this car. And being the first engine that I've built myself, kind of reluctant to spend a huge amount on like a stroker kit, $3,500, something goes wrong. That could be an expensive mistake. So I'm kind of on the fence whether I just reassemble this kind of as it is and maybe just go aftermarket heads and inlet manifold and just kind of leave the bottom end what it is, keep it a 302, save that money, and then look at doing another rebuild, not a rebuild, but a brand new engine with a aftermarket block. So we can really go for some bigger horsepower down the track and just use this as an interim build. So it's a tricky one. I'm on the fence about which way I want to go. In one way, I really do just want to go all out, but at the same time, this is already aboard 30 thou over, so I don't really know how much I'm going to be able to do with this block, and I feel like it's going to be a limitation in really pushing any high horsepower going forward. And if something breaks, you know, that's going to be catastrophic and cause some serious damage to all the other components. So, you know, maybe this block here is just a rebuild with the existing components because they are still in pretty good condition. It wasn't an engine I did a huge amount of Ks on when I originally had it built, so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of the bearings and stuff are actually still quite good and quite usable if I wanted to. But, you know, maybe we can just do all new bearings, stick with the same pistons, rings. Let's not possibly worry about even doing a hone or anything. Just put those pistons and stuff back in the same cylinders and just reassemble like that and just work on heads, inlet manifold, and something we can transition to a block down the track. So that's kind of where we are at the engine. I'm going to wrap this one up now. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. If you have any thoughts, comments, what you would do if you were in my position, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.